Dr. Emma Santos had run cargo missions to dozens of research outposts, but Kepler 442c always made her stomach clench. The moon's surface stretched below like a sheet of obsidian glass, broken only by the jagged spires that jutted skyward like frozen screams. Somewhere down there lurked the Titan 50 feet of crystalline death that had turned 3 research stations into graveyards. "Orbital command to supply runner 7, crackled the comm. "You're cleared for automated drop. Do not attempt manual landing." Emma's fingers tightened on the controls as her ship shuddered through atmospheric entry. The automated systems would deploy the supply pods and get her out of there in under 2 minutes. Standard protocol when dealing with a Class X extinction threat. That's when the meteor shower hit. The first impact sent her ship spinning. Warning lights blazed across her console as debris punched through her hull like bullets through paper. Emma fought the controls, but the ship was already falling, trailing fire across the alien sky. "Mayday, mayday. Supply runner 7 going. Down, repeat, I'm going down in the exclusion zone." The comm erupted with panicked voices. "Santos, eject. Get out of there." But it was too late. The ground rushed up to meet her, and Emma's world exploded in a cascade of sparks and twisted metal. High above, military drones adjusted their positions, cameras zooming in on the crash site. In the command center on Orbital Station Prometheus, Director Hayes watched the feeds with grim resignation. "How long before the Titan reaches her position?" he asked. Lieutenant Commander Torres checked her instruments. "Heat sensors show it's already moving. 8 minutes, maybe 10. Hayes closed his eyes. Emma Santos would become victim number 47. They'd add her name to the memorial wall and file another report about the creature's unstoppable aggression. On the surface, Emma stirred in the wreckage, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. She tried to activate her emergency beacon, but her vision blurred and darkness claimed her. The drones watched as a massive shadow approached through the crystalline spires, the Titan of Kepler, moving with surprising grace for something so enormous. Its body caught the alien sunlight and scattered it into rainbow fragments. Every military analyst expected the same outcome they'd witnessed before: swift, brutal death. Instead, they watched something impossible unfold. The Titan stopped beside the wreckage and tilted its massive head, studying the unconscious human with what could only be described as curiosity. Then, with movements more delicate than a surgeon's, it began clearing debris from around Emma's body. In the command center, stunned silence fell over the crew as they witnessed something that defied every classification, every report, every assumption they'd made about the creature that had haunted their nightmares for years. Asterisk. Emma woke to the sound of harmonic resonance, deep, melodic tones that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Her head throbbed, and her left arm hung useless at her side, but she was alive. More surprisingly, she was warm. Opening her eyes slowly, she found herself in a shelter of sorts. Crystalline formations had been carefully arranged to create a windbreak, and the ground beneath her had been covered with some kind of fibrous material that felt surprisingly soft. Streams of filtered sunlight painted rainbow patterns on the walls. "Command, this is Santos," she whispered into her comm unit. Static answered her. A shadow fell across the shelter entrance, and Emma's breath caught. The Titan of Kepler stood there, its massive form blocking out the sky. Up close, she could see that its crystalline skin wasn't the crude armor she'd imagined from the reports, but something more like living art, complex geometric patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid light. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her injuries made that impossible. Instead, she watched in fascination as the creature extended one enormous hand. In its palm sat a collection of what like water-clear liquid that caught the light like diamonds. The Titan made those harmonic sounds again, softer now, almost questioning. It was offering her the water. Emma's throat was parched, but accepting anything from humanity's greatest nightmare seemed like madness. Yet something in the creature's posture, the careful way it held perfectly still, the gentle tilt of its massive head reminded her of her childhood, dog trying to comfort her after a scraped knee. She reached out with her good hand and cupped some of the liquid. It was cool and pure, better than anything from the recyclers on Prometheus. As she drank, the Titan's body seemed to brighten slightly, its crystalline surface pulsing with what might have been satisfaction dot in orbit above. Director Hayes stared at the drone feeds in disbelief. "Are you recording this?" "Every second," Torres confirmed. "Command is never going to believe it." They watched as the Titan moved around Emma's shelter, adjusting the crystal formations to better catch the warming rays of Kepler's star. When Emma shivered, the creature's body began to emit a subtle heat, raising the temperature in the enclosed space. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's xenobiologist, pushed forward to study the monitors. "This is unprecedented. Look at the behavioral complexity. It's not just keeping her alive, it's actively problem-solving to improve her comfort." "But why?" Hayes demanded. "This thing has killed dozens of our people. What makes Santos different?" On the surface, Emma was wondering the same thing. The fever from her injuries made thinking difficult, but one thing was becoming clear. The monster that had haunted human nightmares wasn't a monster at all. The way it moved around her, careful never to cast threatening shadows, the gentle concern in those alien features, it was caring for her like a parent tending a sick child. As darkness fell over Kepler 442c, the Titan settled down near the shelters. Entrance, its body casting a protective barrier against the moon's frigid night. Its internal light pulsed steadily, a beacon of warmth in the alien darkness. Emma's fever broke on the third day, and with clarity came wonder. The Titan she'd started thinking of it as Kepler, rather than the creature, had been tending to her with the patience of a devoted nurse. It brought her water twice daily, adjusted her shelter when the sun's angle changed, and even seemed to have found some kind of edible moss that tasted surprisingly like mint. But it was the sounds that intrigued her most. Every evening, as Kepler's star set behind the crystalline spires, the Titan would settle near her shelter and begin to sing. That was the only word for it: complex, harmonic patterns that seemed to tell stories. Emma, with her background in xenolinguistics, began to recognize recurring themes in the melodies. "Command, are you receiving this?" She whispered into her repaired cum unit, holding it toward the Titan as it sang. Director Hayes' voice crackled back. "We're getting it. Santos, Dr. Webb says the harmonic patterns show signs of linguistic structure." Emma smiled weakly. "It's not just linguistic, it's emotional. This is storytelling, Director. The Titan is trying to communicate." On Prometheus, the command center had become a 24-hour hub of activity. Linguists, xenobiologists, and military strategists crowded around monitors, showing the impossible relationship unfolding on the moon's surface. The footage had been transmitted to Earth, where it was causing upheavals in scientific and military circles alike. "The patterns are consistent with memorial songs," Dr. Webb explained to the assembled team. "Many species use ritualized vocalizations to commemorate the dead or preserve cultural memory." That night, Emma tried something that would have been considered suicidal just days earlier. When the Titan began its evening song, she hummed along, trying to match its harmonics with her limited human vocal range. The effect was immediate. The Titan's massive head turned toward her, its crystalline features brightening with what could only be joy. It modulated its song, bringing the pitch lower so she could follow more easily, and the two of them sang together under the alien stars. Through the harmonic communication, fragmented images began to form in Emma's mind, not her own memories. But something else. She saw vast cities of crystal and light, populated by beings like the Titan, but smaller, more delicate. She saw gardens where tiny, vulnerable creatures were tended with infinite care. She saw children, not human children, but something analogous playing under the protection of towering guardians. And then she saw the ending. Disease, war, extinction. The guardians dying one by one until only Kepler remained, alone on a moon that had once been a sanctuary for the small and helpless. Emma wept as the visions faded, understanding flooding through her. You were a guardian, she whispered. You were protecting them, and now they're gone. The Titan song shifted to something heartbreakingly mournful, a lament for civilizations lost to time god in orbit. Director Hayes made a decision that would change everything. Prep the rescue shuttle, he ordered. I'm going down there myself. Sir, that violates every protocol. Dr. Santos has made first contact with a sentient species, Hayes interrupted. This changes our entire understanding of the Titan. I won't risk losing this opportunity. As the rescue shuttle began its descent, Emma didn't know that her newfound friendship with humanity's greatest nightmare was about to be tested by the arrival of those who still saw Kepler as a threat to be neutralized. Asterisk. The rescue shuttle landed 2 kilometers from Emma's crystal shelter, far enough to avoid provoking the Titan, but close enough for a quick extraction if needed. Director Hayes led the team himself, accompanied by Dr. Webb and a squad of heavily armed Marines. Emma watched their approach through her binoculars, her heart sinking. She could see the weapons, the defensive formation, the way they moved like soldiers approaching an enemy, position rather than scientists making contact with a new intelligence. Kepler sensed her distress immediately. The Titan's crystalline form darkened, its harmonic songs taking on warning tones that reverberated across the landscape. For the first time since her crash, Emma felt fear not of Kepler, but for what might happen when 2 incompatible worldviews collided. Santos, this is Hayes, her comm crackled. We're here to extract you. Move away from the creature. We'll lay down covering fire. Director, no. Emma's voice was sharp with panic. It's not hostile. It's been protecting me. Santos, you've been isolated for 6 days with possible head trauma. The thing is a Class X threat. We're getting you out of there. Emma struggled to her feet, her healing injuries protesting. Kepler immediately moved closer, its massive form creating a protective barrier between her and the approaching humans. The gesture was gentle, but unmistakable. A parent shielding its child from perceived danger. The Marines raised their weapons. Stand down. Dr. Webb's voice cut through the tension. Look at its posture, its positioning. This isn't aggressive behavior. It's protective. Hayes studied the scene through his tactical scope. The Titan could have killed Emma a dozen times over, yet she stood beside it without fear. One small hand resting against its crystalline leg, like a child clinging to a parent. Santos, Hayes called out, lowering his weapon. Can you ask it to let us approach? Emma looked up at Kepler's towering form, then began to hum one of the harmony patterns she'd learned. The Titan's song joined hers, and slowly, Emma walked forward, Kepler matching her pace. They stopped halfway between the shelter and the rescue team. The effect on the humans was profound. Up close, the Titan's presence was overwhelming, but not in the way they'd expected. Instead of radiating menace, it seemed to emanate a deep, protective warmth. Several of the Marines unconsciously lowered their weapons. My God, Dr. Webb breathed. It's not a predator at all. Look at the cranial structure, the positioning of the sensory organs. This is a caregiver species. Hayes stepped forward cautiously. Dr. Santos, what have you learned? Emma's voice was strong despite her injuries. They were guardians, Director. An entire civilization dedicated to protecting smaller species. Kepler is the last one. and it's been alone here for ... I don't know how long, centuries, maybe millennia. She began to sing softly, and images flickered in the minds of the listening humans' visions of the lost civilization that Kepler had shared with her. The Marines stared in wonder at mental pictures of crystal cities and gardens full of tiny, cherished beings. The previous research teams, Emma continued. I think Kepler was trying to protect its territory, not out of aggression, but because it was waiting for someone small and lost who might need a guardian. The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity's greatest nightmare was actually a lonely parent, desperate to fulfill its biological imperative to care for the helpless. But their moment of understanding was shattered by the arrival of 3 military gunships screaming overhead. Admiral Voss's voice boomed from external speakers. All personnel, immediate extraction. The creature is to be terminated on my authority. Kepler's form blazed with alarm as targeting lasers painted red dots across its crystalline skin. Emma threw herself against the Titan's leg, spreading her arms wide in a futile gesture of protection. If you fire on it, you'll have to go through me. She screamed into her Kundot. The standoff stretched taut as the gunships circled like mechanical vultures, waiting for the order that would end the last guardian of an extinct civilization. The standoff lasted 17 minutes that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Emma stood defiantly against Kepler's massive leg, while targeting lasers painted crimson warnings across both of them. The Titan remained perfectly still, understanding somehow that any movement might trigger the destruction it had feared for so long. Admiral, Voss's voice cut through the tension. Dr. Santos, you have 30 seconds to clear the kill zone. Admiral? Director Hayes interjected on an open channel. I'm ordering you to stand down. Dr. Santos has established communication with a sentient species. This is a first contact scenario, not a military engagement. My authority supersedes yours, Director. That creature has killed 46 personnel. It dies today. Emma looked up at Kepler's towering form and saw something that broke her heart. Titan was slowly dimming its internal light, its harmonic songs taking on the cadence of a farewell. It was preparing to die rather than risk harm coming to her. You want to know what makes this creature dangerous? Emma shouted into her comb, her voice carrying across the open channel to Prometheus, to Earth, to the dozen worlds where humans had heard this story. It's not claws or strength or aggression. It's love. Pure, unconditional, protective love for anything small and vulnerable. And we're about to murder the last being in the universe capable of that kind of devotion. She began to sing not the complex harmonies Kepler had taught her, but a simple human lullaby her grandmother had sung to her as a child. Kepler's voice joined hers, the two melodies intertwining in a song that spoke of protection, of comfort, of the universal bond between guardian and protected. The effect on the listening humans was immediate and profound. The Marines lowered their weapons entirely. Dr. Webb was openly weeping. Even Admiral Voss's gunships held their fire as the impossible duet continued through the shared harmonic connection. Every human in range experienced Kepler's memories, the joy of tending gardens full of fragile life, the pride in watching small beings grow and flourish under protection, and the crushing loneliness of centuries spent guarding an empty sanctuary. But they also felt something else, Kepler's response to humans. To the Titan, they were the most beautiful sight it had encountered in 1,000 years bipedal, fragile, exactly the right size to trigger every protective instinct its species possessed. Humanity wasn't the Titan's enemy. They were the answer to its prayers. Stand down, all units, came a new voice over the comm. Admiral Chun, Voss's superior, had been monitoring from Earth. By joint order of the Terran Science Council and Colonial Command, Kepler 442c is hereby designated a diplomatic preserve. Any hostile action against the indigenous guardian is considered an act of xenocide. The gunships withdrew, their departure, marked by the collective exhale of a dozen held breaths. Emma looked up at Kepler and made a choice that surprised even herself. "I'm staying," she announced. "Someone needs to establish proper communication protocols, to learn their language, to make sure this never happens again." Director Hayes started to object, but Emma held up her hand. "Look around you, Director. Look at what we almost lost. Kepler isn't just the last of its kind. It's the last reminder that protection and care can be more powerful than any weapon. Humanity needs that reminder." As the rescue teams prepared to leave, Emma noticed something wonderful happening. The Marines were leaving supplies, not just for her, but arranged as offerings near Kepler's crystalline form. Food, water, even. Some of their personal items. Gifts for the Guardian, who had shown them a different way to be strong. Dr. Webb approached Emma one last time. "The Xenobiology Department is already approving funding for a permanent research station. You won't be alone here forever." Emma smiled, watching as Kepler began to sing again, not the mournful laments she'd first heard, but something that sounded like hope. "I'm not alone now," she said. That night, under twin moons and alien stars, Emma and Kepler sat together in the crystal shelter. She told him about Earth, about human children who needed protection, about the possibility that other guardian species might still exist among the stars. Kepler listened with the patience of eons and responded with songs about dreams of tending gardens full of small, precious lives. Once again, the galaxy had learned something precious from the moon. Kepler 442c. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't destruction, but the fierce, protective love of a guardian who refuses to give up hope. And in the years that followed, as humanity spread further among the stars, they carried with them the memory of the last guardian, a reminder that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the commitment to protect what is small and vulnerable and infinitely worth saving. Asterisk.